Here we go.
This meeting is being recorded.
What is going on, guys? We are back with the podcast. Don't know what episode number this is. I think it's like 58 or something. But we're here with Austin. Austin, good to be on Zoom with you again.
Yep, good to be back. It's been a little bit since we've done one of these. I think the last one we did was in person.
Yeah.
That was around Granite Games, probably.
It was. You've had some pretty big life circumstances happening over the last 2 months.
Yeah, we just opened our gym. That's a plaque some old clients of mine gave me when I left the other gym that I was head trainer at for 3 years, but came into the space on August 1st. It's kind of officially opened on September 1st, and it's been kind of a wild ride. But everything's going really good. Our membership numbers are up higher than what I anticipated them being at the start. So, I mean, everything's good. It's just a lot of like controlled chaos at the moment in a way.
Yeah, as is what seems like being tradition for opening a gym up.
Yep. It's good atmosphere. We got basically all of our equipment in and everything now, so we can open up training. Good group of people. Like everybody is excited about the change and stuff because there was a gym in this location that went under, but I rented out the space, got a lot of people back, got a lot of people who had previously left and are now coming back. So there's a lot of excitement and a lot of hype, and it's kind of my job to keep that up and make sure everybody cared for, which it's fun. It's exciting. It's creating a lot of new like relationships, but it's also like the act of creating a lot of new relationships too. So there's definitely longer days, but things are going well.
Yeah. Would you say you're more of a people person than like an introvert, or extrovert versus introvert?
I would say more of an extrovert, like overall, but I would say because of that, being extroverted and like talking all day and doing things like that, there's definitely the moment like when I get home in the evening, it's like I don't want to say a word for the next half hour or an hour.
Yeah.
Where it's like I still need like say my alone time or like downtime, but I do enjoy the act of like talking with people.
Yeah, no doubt. I remember that being the case when I was coaching group classes. Like you're just fucking talking to people for 16 hours out of the day. And then you come home and like if you live with roommates, or I lived with my parents at the time, I'm like, I don't want to say anything to you. Like
no. And I mean, that's where even when we get at home, Samantha being a nurse in the NICU with the small babies, like the babies don't talk. So when she gets home, she wants to talk, and then I'm like, I don't want to talk. So we got to find that balance and stuff like that between us and everything. But it goes well. Yeah, there's a lot of talk throughout the day.
Yeah. That's sweet. Well, yeah, let's start getting into this. With competition season starting off here, a lot of qualifiers coming up. I think Wadapalooza actually starts this week. There is going to be a lot of ranges of emotions that start coming up inside of your training, sport, etc. And obviously, if you achieve your goal, it's pretty easy to ride the high emotion of it accomplishing what you set out to accomplish. But in sport, that is not always the case. And we're kind of gonna chat today about falling short of your goal and kind of how to set up some framework around that as far as like mental capacity goes, and what you can kind of do to use that to better yourself in the future. And so I think what we had chatted about before starting off the podcast was kind of just laying the framework that you have before you kind of say your goal or start to commit to accomplishing your goal. And Austin, if you want to chat on that a little bit and just kind of some of the things that we had talked about.
Yeah, I think kind of what like you're getting into, like we have that goal, or you have that like say before it becomes like an official goal, like the idea of like I want to do this or I want to complete this. Well, then it's like laying the foundation and realizing that it's not obviously like going to come right away. There's going to be potentially like life changes for you, whether you move, whether you change like social groups you do. There could be a number of things that have to happen. And so like in order for you to solidify like that idea as a goal, we got to be like realistic with like the foundational changes that need to happen in order for you to like, okay, traject yourself into like achieving that goal.
Mhm.
So I think like having the mindset of like, okay, this is what I want to do, but then what do I need to do before I actually start the goal? And then
Yeah,
once you
so
start reaching towards that goal or doing things to improve, that's when you can get like more nitty gritty, but you got to start yourself out on the right foot, if that makes
yeah,
sense. I think that's what we were getting at there.
yeah. So like when you say start yourself out on the right foot, like what exactly does that look like to you? Like you obviously just had this goal of opening up a gym. So like what were you doing to prepare mentally to get yourself to open this gym?
I mean, getting everything in order. So, I mean, we knew about this space a couple months before. I mean, we didn't have like a year or so to like plan this out. We basically
Mhm.
found out that they needed to be out in like a 2 month span. So we had like 2 months to, okay, plan, organize, talk to building owners, talk to this, figure out what we're doing for equipment,
Mhm.
and like what I needed to do to start. It was like there's a lot of bells and whistles. There's a lot of like different things that are like in the grand scheme of things, yes, they're important, but what are my like bare bones things that I need to like train and
Mhm.
people in a gym? And it was like, okay, well, I need figuring out like funding and everything for like equipment and then
Mhm.
or financial aspect. And then it's also like creating those relationships before getting in. So when I do walk through the doors on August 1st or when I pay the keys, it's not just, okay, I'm in the building. Now who do I talk to?
Mhm.
So the biggest things for me were, okay, I know how to train people, I know how to program. I can do that, but now I need the avenue to train people, which is a facility and equipment. And I also need to have people to train. So like
Yeah.
those are my like first two steps.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's like reaching out to some of the people who used to go here, who were members up until they closed, or friends in the area, or even like my neighbor was a longtime member here. She had left. She's well kind of connected in the community, so talking to her, having different phone calls. My normal drive time down to the gym that I was coaching at used to be like, okay, this is quiet time for me. Where like we talked at the beginning, we're like, oh, okay, I just left work. I don't want to talk. Well, that ended up being like time that I could utilize for like phone conversations, where I was like reaching out to like some of these members, even like the part-time coaches, like having conversations with them. I'm keeping both of them on that were here. I heard they're really good for the community. They're going to be starting to
Mhm.
coach probably in the next few weeks. Um, and then just like establishing myself in the space so people know who I am. I don't get in on
Mhm.
August 1st and then they're like, who's this guy?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so then they already were, okay, I have some trust or some buy-in. Let me try this. And then so they came in, and then that's where like building the relationships started. And then over
Yeah.
time, we slowly got more equipment and everything. We held free classes for a while because I'm not going to charge someone for a membership if they're not getting the full value of their membership.
Right. Right.
So, but yeah, the relationships and the facility slash equipment, and like those are the two biggest like first things.
Yeah.
And from
Yeah.
there, it's like, okay, well, now what do I need to do, like say business wise, software wise,
Mhm.
other like drinks that we already started to sell, apparel, and all these like other little avenues, and even like personal training and stuff like that that generate like money coming in for the business. But those are all kind of like secondary, and those are the
Mhm.
stuff that we like just previously done, and now it's like onto like future steps. I'm like, okay, well, we got our good base. Now how do we grow?
Mhm. Yeah.
It was
So
kind of like
kind of
my step forward into it, like that initial, like, okay, this is my foundation. Now I build on the foundation.
yeah. Yeah. So I think like obviously that was like talking about a gym and
Yes.
but there's some kind of principles that we can pull out from there that apply to athletics as well. And like, so I think the big thing that was kind of like the common theme there was, so like you knew where you wanted to go, but you had a bunch of planning to do to get there.
Correct.
Uh, and I think that's where a lot of people kind of miss the bucket is they set this goal, but then they don't do the research or they don't plan or they don't, figure out how am I going to get there? Like I just have this goal, and if I I'm not doing anything different to get to that goal. And kind of one of the things you were talking about was you were talking to a bunch of people, you were calling people, you were trying to get the other coaches to stay on board. And I think one big thing that is like the best question you can start asking yourself when you do like lay down that goal is, what am I good at and what do I need help with? And when you answer that question or ask that question and kind of do some research to figure that out, maybe you find that you're really, really good at fucking pushing yourself in the gym and going hard as fuck, but you're not good at the recovery aspect. So I need somebody to help with my recovery aspect of this goal of mine. Or
Correct.
you're not good at the diagnosing, what exactly it is that you need training wise. So you need to find a coach to help you with that, or the programming aspect of it. Like I just go long, hard workouts all the time, and I never live inside of that short time domain. So I need somebody to kind of look after that for me. So again, a coach. So I think that is kind of like setting yourself up for success in a small sense for your goal. And that's kind of getting you to the point where you can start to be like, okay, if I'm going to do this, these are all the little things that I have to commit to truly be dedicated towards this goal. And that, I think, is the ultimate thing that we need to first set out to do in order to really realize how dedicated we are towards accomplishing something, and then kind of the emotions that we can have or realistic expectations we can have after that timeline or goal is accomplished or not accomplished.
Yep. And I mean, you hit kind of the nail right on the head with that too. Because I mean, coming into this, I'll circle back into like the athlete spectrum too, like even just on my side with the gym. Having just like past friendships and things like that, like I knew somebody who's like an expert in finance. So he did all of our financial modeling. We got a business consultant who I have a good relationship with, and he's opened up multiple gyms. This is my number one gym. So having somebody who's been through it before and knowing that like I'm not an expert in everything, the things I am an expert in, I'll do that well. But the things I'm not, it's the ability and like the understanding that it's okay to ask for help too. So like talking to them, having the help, and then like it creates a better support system. And I feel like the more people you have like in your corner, you're going to set yourself up to do better too. Because you also have like a little bit of like an accountability aspect within that. Because it's like, well, if I don't do this, they're going to know, and I'm not going to reach the goal that we had talked about and like set out. And so that can be kind of in the same aspect for like an athlete purpose. Like they're reaching out as far as like a coach. The coach is there to be in their corner. Like it's, say the person, we'll just call them athlete one. Like athlete one has a team around them. Whether it's somebody for recovery, it's nutrition, it's the actual physical act of like the coaching and programming, but they're establishing themselves to do well because of the team that's like put up around them. But now that's kind of the initial stage, building the team. And now it's like, well, now it's up to the athlete one to put in the work that coach one, coach two, and coach three or whatever laid out for them
For sure.
to do well. Because like, so if you have that goal where it's like, okay, I need to go to the gym from this time to this time, I work from this time to this time, I need to make sure I'm sleeping 8 hours a night so I can do this. Well, I prefer to hang out on my phone or do whatever else, and my sleep went down to 5 hours instead of 8 hours. Well, then you're not putting in like athlete one is not putting in their own individual work to match the goals that have been set up from them and coach 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, for sure. And I think one thing too that maybe we want to kind of touch on before we get a little bit deeper into this is you also want to constantly be reevaluating your process and what other people are doing. And so back in the day in 2012, you could do one workout a day and potentially and make it to the CrossFit Games. Your nutrition didn't necessarily have to be dialed in. You could be getting away with 6 hours of sleep a night. Like maybe you were getting 6 hours of sleep and doing double sessions or something like that.
Yeah.
But a lot of the time you don't see a lot of those people competing for a long period of time. Like maybe they got their goal and then they they ghosted, which is totally fine too. Like that might be what you want to accomplish. But the process has evolved, and now almost every single athlete that is at the CrossFit Games has a coach. They're sleeping 8 hours a night. Their nutrition is dialed in. Their training is maximized to whatever it is that they need from a recover or from a training standpoint. Their recovery is completely dialed in to maximize their training. And so, like, if you're creating that goal, you constantly need to be reevaluating what everyone else is doing and how to either offset what they're doing with your schedule or creating your schedule in order to accomplish what it is that they're doing. And so a lot of it is kind of like looking at your peers and what they're also doing to put you on a level playing field. Now, it isn't compare yourself to them, but it is to get ideas and kind of see what you need to do to get yourself on a level playing field in regards to your competition.
Yeah. And like, just how you mentioned, like back in 2012, like you didn't have to do as many things as you have to do now. And I think that's just the overall like understanding of evolution of sport. Because I mean, you could CrossFit's somewhat still like new and up and coming in the grand scheme of like just professional sports. But you look back at, say, the NFL, which is already a very well-established professional sport. You look back maybe 40, 50 years ago, halftime, people are going in the locker room, they're smoking cigarettes, doing things like that in the middle of the game. And now, like, they're doing a polar opposite, where at halftime, they maybe have, like, some physical therapist that's working on them to make sure that they can compete and do well in the second half. And like every like 1% like matters to these athletes. And it's the same thing in the CrossFit space where your recovery, your mobility, every like 1% change that you can do could be a difference in like the outcome of what it is.
I mean, it could be like in the open, it's like hundreds of spots on the leaderboard if you slept 8 hours the night before or not.
Yep. And that could be just one rep.
Yeah, right. Which like 8 hours of sleep is potentially the difference in multiple reps, more than just one rep,
Correct.
So, yeah, I guess so. Maybe to kind of wrap this up into what we're talking about is like, so this foundation kind of lays or should lay your expectations in regards to your goal. So like if you've kind of done the research and you've looked at, hey, what do I need to do to get to where I want to go? And maybe it's an intermediate division in a competition where things aren't as serious. Most people have full-time jobs, et cetera, and you don't have to dial in your nutrition crazy. You don't have to maybe necessarily sleep 8 hours a night. Maybe you don't drink enough water or something like that, where each level that you're trying to compete at has a different kind of baseline for a level playing field. And if you do all the right things and you're competing at a baseline of what the games athletes are doing, your chances of accomplishing a goal at like an intermediate level or whatever level you're trying to compete at are exponentially higher. But it doesn't necessarily mean, it's kind of like bonus performance, if you will. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you are also going to accomplish that goal. But it does allow you to give some expectations and reasonable kind of I don't know if commitment's the right word here, but like it allows you to set expectations for, hey, I'm doing every single thing I can possibly do to accomplish this, or you know what, I understand that my schedule is a little bit different than these people and I'm not necessarily able to commit to that to accomplish this goal. And I think when you can set those expectations beforehand based off of the research that you do, whatever the outcome of that goal is a little bit more manageable emotion wise, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, and when you're setting the expectations, you're coming up with realistic goals. Like if your goal is to win the CrossFit Games, like that's the pinnacle of what the sport is. But you have a job, like a full-time career that you're required to work like overnights, which is going to significantly like hamper your performance and everything. So like yes, like that should be like everybody's shooting for the stars. Like, yeah, I want to win the CrossFit Games, but also realizing like, okay, if I want to do that, I'm either one gonna have to get a new job, which I'm not like
Mhm.
advocating for anybody getting a new job. Like,
Yeah,
we
right.
need to be able to like feed ourselves and pay mortgage and everything. But like maybe instead of winning the CrossFit Games, it's like, okay, if we're relatively new in the sport, it's like, okay, let's see what I can do. Maybe first step, make it to a semifinal event.
Hmm.
And then like from there, reevaluate, just like you had talked about, where it's like a staging process. I reevaluate, I made my first step. And then, okay, what can I do differently now to get to the next level, which is maybe just qualify for the games. And I'm sure you're going to have to make pretty significant changes in order to do that. But it's like having a realistic approach by setting those expectations. So you're not just like aiming high, but then you have a lot of cracks along the way.
Hmm. Hmm. So kind of, I guess, getting into this next step here, like let's say your goal is to semi or some sort of competition, you do the online qualifier and you've kind of just put your heart and soul into this. You've slept 8 hours, you've got a coach, you've dialed in your nutrition, and you don't end up qualifying. So like how do you manage the emotions that come along with it, and the like your expectations that just kind of got shattered, if that makes sense?
Well, like I think um I heard this a long time ago. I believe it was maybe like Ben Bergeron or something said like when he was talking about Katrin, I believe, but like
Mhm.
after like a bad event or something like that, where it's like, okay, you can take your like 5 minutes or 10 minutes, like kind of feel bad. Like it's
Mhm.
okay to have emotions. Like you shouldn't just suppress like everything, but take that little bit of time and like let it sink in. But then afterwards, it's like we got to flip the switch, and it's like
Mhm.
now I have to think about, okay, what could I have done differently? Like,
Mhm.
yes, we may think 100% all the way was like perfect, but chances are there might be something that we could, or there could have been
Mhm.
something that could have been different. And then
Mhm.
you kind of go through that evaluation process. And then it's like, okay, well, now we lay out a blueprint for like what we'll do like next. Because everything you
Mhm.
do too, you may think like, oh, I'm going to get a perfect 100% outcome. But if it doesn't happen, well, then it's like, okay, not saying like say back to the drawing board, but it's like, okay, how can we learn from this and move on to where this isn't like a repeatable outcome in a way.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I think it's okay to have that like 5 to 10 minutes of like, okay, this sucks, have the
Yeah.
emotions and everything, but then it's like, okay, how can I learn from this? I think every
Mhm.
opportunity, whether you fail, whether you succeed, you reach your goal, you don't, you can learn from what you did.
Yeah. There's a good book out there called Growth Mindset, and by Carol Dweck. I think I've recommended it on the podcast before, but um, every opportunity is a basically it boils down to every opportunity is a learning opportunity for you. And to go along with what you were saying, Austin, like, okay, you didn't accomplish your goal. You felt like you did everything right. You're kind of over the period of like, man, this fucking sucks, like yada yada yada. There
Yeah.
is always something you could have done differently, whether that be in training. So like you need to communicate with your coach, like, hey, I feel like we need more of this in here, or I feel like we need more of this in here, or like, hey, I know we tried to address this, but what we did didn't work. Like, how can we come up with something else? Whether it be, yeah, I would get done with my qualifier workouts on Friday, knowing I had to retest on Monday, and I would just go and eat a burger and French fries because celebration of finishing your first. That was what we would do in the open all the time,
Yeah.
you
Oh,
know.
for sure.
so, uh, so like even something as simple as that is something that you can look to adjust and change, or maybe it was like, hey, my nutrition was dialed in, but I still felt like I was dragging ass on my retest and not recovered for my retests. Like, was it, you know, was I not eating enough because the intensity and the stress is so much higher? Is that a new experience for me? But there's always something that you can go along and kind of learn from, and just because you didn't accomplish what you set out to accomplish doesn't mean that you're stuck in never getting past that point. And this is kind of like who you are as a person. There's always an opportunity for you to learn, grow as a person so that you can accomplish whatever it is you set out to accomplish.
Yeah.
And I think one other thing too that I think is also a good thing to comprehend as an athlete is like there is a certain, in every sport, there is a certain amount of chaos that we can not control for. And
Yep.
the only thing that you can truly control is your effort, your execution, and your focus. And so I think one big thing that a big thing that you can go back and reevaluate at the end of a qualifier if you didn't accomplish your goal, and even if you accomplished your goal, there's always things you can work on, is going back and questioning, were those things all controlled well throughout my qualifier? And that, I think, is a big question you can ask yourself of, nope, I left reps on the table in workout 1. I felt like I maximized my performance on workout 2, but I know I left some reps on the table for workout 3, whatever it is. I think that's a super big question that needs to be asked at the end of your qualifier, whether you accomplish your goal or not. Those 3 things are the only things you can control. And then the rest of the stuff is like chaos, and it's variables that we can work to minimize, but it's not that we can ever fully control those other variables. We can minimize the amount of chaos that they have, but we can never fully control what your competition is doing, training or effort or any of those things.
Well, and that's where I think having the understanding like with the athlete too, and then also too within like the athlete type like coach relationship, I feel like it very is strongly like it's a two-way street on this. Like it's not just like like the whole teach a man how to fish versus like giving him a fish. Like if you're just like telling them exactly what to do every single time, then they don't have like the exposure, that internal like dialogue when like something doesn't go right, and then it's like they look to you, but you're in the stands or something, and then they don't know what to do on the floor. And then it's with that, it's like almost having them in a way they can think for themselves, they can give us feedback, and then we communicate as kind of like a partnership to go forward. And that way, like if there is some of that chaos, at least it's minimized, like you were talking about, because they kind of understand like how to work through it themselves, versus like being very reliant on like somebody else. Obviously, they should rely on the coach. The coach is there for a reason, but in the middle of a competition or say a 20-minute AMRAP, that's a lot of time that like things can go left or right. And so it's like, how do I try to keep that like very centered as I'm going through? If I start to sway like in one direction, well, then how can I come back in and be okay? And that's where I think like an athlete can really like grow. And it doesn't even have to mean like in a competition setting, like on the floor. That can be like, okay, when my mind's starting to go and like, oh, can I even do this? Can I do, is this goal like realistic? How can I realign it to be like, okay, I am doing the right things and I am getting closer to my goal, even though like it still seems very distant. Because it can be very easy to get very down very quick.
Oh yeah.
Negativity can pile up fast. Positive thoughts and like a positive mindset takes a while to like develop. Just like if you stop working out, you can get out of shape pretty quick, but it takes a long time to like get in good shape.
Yeah, especially the older you get.
Yes. So that's where I think like having the communication aspect and having it be like a partnership can help minimize a lot of those things versus someone always feeling like alone, or they need somebody to tell them because they're not able to like think for themselves in a way. And I'm not saying like all athletes do that, but it's just, it can be a common thing because especially if you're competing as an individual, like you're solo a lot of the time versus like a team, you have other people around you in the same workout type setting that you can kind of lean on versus just the coach. If that kind of makes sense. And hopefully like establishes a little bit more of hopefully trying to minimize the risk and chaos.
Yeah. I think, you know, I 100% agree with everything you're saying there. I think, you know, a little bit of a caveat on I think we're on a little bit of a tangent here, but
Yeah.
but yeah, I think like the sports, like I quantify that as like sports IQ, and like
Yep.
part of that is kind of the mental component of like, hey, I know what a good mindset looks like and maybe even feels like. So how do I work to get to that good positive mindset? And that isn't to say that you should always live in that good positive mindset. Like you're gonna have points in time where you just like maybe you bomb a workout and you're like, God, I'm a fucking piece of shit. Like it happens. You know?
I've been there.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're just like, you know, you're pissed off with your effort. Like you're like, why would you not have tried harder on that? Whatever it is. But you also now have the tools, maybe through your coach, like giving you the tools or like teaching you the tools to get yourself out of that rut and get yourself back into a good positive mindset of like, okay, let's take a step back here. Yeah, I didn't give my best effort on that workout, but I know that now, and I know how to adjust maybe some of the thought processes that are coming in during that workout so that I can give my best effort in that workout. And I just, you know, they just happen to get the better of me this time, you know?
Yeah.
And yeah,
I think part of that chaos, like what you just had said too, with like somebody getting the better, they just like your other athletes, you can't control the other athletes. The other
yeah,
athletes are part of that chaos that you just can't control.
exactly. Yep.
And there's some days that you wake up, you can do everything right, but maybe you wake up and you're at 98%. Like it's just, we're human, things happen. But that other athlete woke up, they're 110%, and like you guys both did the right things and it was just their day. But
Yeah.
it's also
Yeah.
like understanding like, hey, like, yeah, they did what maybe you wanted to do, but like it's okay in a way,
Mm,
like because of the fact like we are human, like not everything is going to be perfect, we're not machines.
mhm, mhm.
But like in understanding like, okay, they did this, now how can I emulate maybe like what they did, so you can
Mhm.
maybe have conversations with that athlete or you can do other things. But like
Yeah. Yeah.
at the end of the day, like you can do everything right, but someone might, it just might be their day. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
that's why upsets happen in sports. I mean,
Mhm.
across every major sport.
Yeah, yeah. And I think you know, it's not accomplishing your goal is perceived as kind of like this negative connotation, but like I think one thing that especially CrossFitters need to understand is like, dude, that is a part of sport. Like you have 32 NFL teams coming out to win the Super Bowl every year, and one team does it. That means 31 other teams didn't accomplish their goal that year. And that's like
Yeah.
that is just a part of sport. And kind of going back to the, okay, well, how do we do better for next year, and how do we, you know, what changes do we need to make for next time or next year, whatever it is, just allows you to continue to grow and grow and grow and get better and better and better over time.
Yeah. And I think overtime is very important because I feel like we're
Yeah,
like, even as like a society now, like everything is very like quick, like
yeah,
convenience is like a very hot ticket. Like, oh, I'll pay, I don't know, maybe I'll use like an oil change or something for an example. Like someone will
just
pay an extra like $20 just to be able to pull into maybe like a Valvoline or something versus paying less to schedule an appointment, going in and dropping off the car. So everybody wants things like very kind of like quick, versus like knowing, oh, this could take a couple of years in order for me to like reach where I want to be at. Like you mentioned the NFL, like maybe a season didn't go to plan. They made it to the playoffs, but what's that next step that I need to make it to the Super Bowl? And
Mhm.
it can be fixed right then in that moment. They got to wait a whole year before they try out this new game plan. And it's kind
Yeah.
of the same thing within CrossFit. You have a year-long season. Like
Mhm.
say you make it to the games, but you didn't place where you wanted to. Well, you have a full year up until August again to correct things and change things, but you're not going to be tested and you're not going to be in that situation until the next CrossFit Games. It's not
Totally.
like you're going to be in the CrossFit Games in the middle of December in your home gym while you're training, but what you're doing in your home gym training in December is what's going to propel you to make those changes come
Oh
on.
yeah.
So
Yep.
it's like enjoying the journey versus just, I feel like, solely focusing on that one thing too. I mean, the goals are the reason on like maybe why, but it's also like having the deeper purpose of like, okay, I am doing the right things and I'm enjoying what I'm doing right now. Cause I feel like that's going to keep you on task too. Cause there's dog days in the off season where I'm tired of beat up. I don't want to do this, but it's also like, I get to enjoy it. So that way I can enjoy when I achieve my goal even more.
Yeah. And I think, one thing, maybe kind of circling back to what we were previously talking about, where like, committing to the goal, like you've done the research and you've committed to the goal, is like, after your season's done and whether you accomplished what you set out to accomplish or not, maybe you didn't, there's a point in time in sport where you need to have a little bit of time off and you need to go have fun and find enjoyment again, because a lot of the time trying to accomplish your goal is a grind of a process.
Yep.
And so there is a point in time where you kind of need to back off and have some downtime and just recover. But when that is over, it's you gotta flip that switch and be back to 100% committed, and doing everything you possibly can to make sure that the lessons that you learned that previous year are being implemented and improved, and you yourself are continuing to improve.
Yep.
And kind of one other thing that I wanted to kind of caveat, or maybe change directions here a little bit,
Yep.
is just because you've had previous success in the sport doesn't mean that you're going to continue to have success. What we're chatting about is kind of like that is failure or missing out on opportunity or goals, or is part of sport. Success and continued success or not continued success is another huge part of sport. It's like, yeah, you might have accomplished your goal and been top of the mountain, but you have however many, in the open, it's hundreds of thousands of people wanting to dethrone you from that mountain every single year. And
Yep.
so like you have to figure out a way to recommit yourself to those goals every single year. And that is a completely different mindset that you need to help or to start to develop. And again, finding and seeking help for that is definitely beneficial.
Yeah. And not like you said, if you're on the top of the throne, it's not settling and like in a comparison way where it's like, oh, well, I'm just going to keep doing what I've been doing because I've shown that I'm better than X, Y, and Z or the
Mhm.
rest of the competition field. But you, at the end of the day, like you are competing against like you yourself. So like,
Mhm.
like, hey, this is where I'm at right now. Yes, I beat all these other people in this competition by where I'm
Mhm.
currently at. But next year, they're not going to be where they're at. So if I just continue to do the like very similar things to what I'm currently doing, well then they may surpass me. So you're always kind of like challenging yourself too to like, hey, how can I get better on
Mhm.
this? And like there's you might be really good at 9 out of 10 things, but it's that 1 out of 10 thing that we neglect or just think, oh, I'll be fine. But someone else maximizes to where they're getting their full 10 out of 10 spectrum, and then they're ending up beating you next year. So it's like also not getting like comfortable with like where you're at and always like
Mhm.
seeking improvement.
Yeah, yeah. And man, one of the tough things in this sport too is like, or like maybe in every performance-based sport, is like you could improve on the things that you aren't or are weak at and regress relative to the field.
Yep.
I had that happen in 2014. I was top, 100 in my region. In 2015, I bumped down like 80 something spots inside the region. Like, but I definitely got fitter year to year. So it's one of those things, like it's a learning opportunity. And I learned like, okay, I need to have, a better aerobic system, or for me, I needed to stay healthy throughout the course of the year. Um, and that was something that I learned. And then I started to take my recovery a little bit more seriously. I started to come in and stretch a little bit more, do a little bit more mobility, foam rolling, etc. And I was healthy for a year, and then I ended up jumping up. It wasn't actually it wasn't the next year, but the following year is when I started to jump spots again. And there were some other learning curves that kind of went on along with that. But, you know, it was a 3 year process before I actually started to see improvements from the things that I was working on specific to the open.
Yeah. And that's where it can probably get like for you, oh, I know I got fit. Like you know, you got fitter, you're working on weaknesses. But then if you see that point of like regression in comparison to the field, it's like, well, I've been doing the right things. Like, but then it's also like having trust in the process and like, okay, well, if I just continue to do this and like having the mental fortitude of like sticking with the plan, even though there might be days where it feels like there's a wall in front of you, but like sticking with the plan 3 years down the road, you were in a lot better spot than you were 3 years prior, even though 1 year after you initially made some changes, you maybe weren't at that spot.
Right.
And that's where, I mean, you can judge year to year, and I feel like that's a good baseline, but it's just like any sport. Like it takes time to develop on everything. You can't expect to be where you want to be in 8 months or a year or even a year and a half. Like you can see some of those bigger changes through your different like cycles in the year for training. Maybe it takes 2 years for some people. Some people, maybe it takes 4. And that's where everybody's a little different too, where you shouldn't compare to, oh, well, athlete 2 did it in 18 months. Well, athlete 1, it maybe will take you 30 months to do.
Yeah.
You're going to be in a lot better spot because you committed to the process and like were like withstanding and standing strong the whole time.
Yep. Man, I just I got a new laptop here and I just hid my browser screen. I have no idea how to open this back up. Okay, hold on. Well, this is interesting. There we go. Got it.
We're back.
Yeah, we're back. Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Like it is a process and a journey, and it definitely you know, one person's journey is going to be completely different than another person's journey, and you just have to kind of recognize that and just always continually seek improvement. Like I didn't never roll over and quit, like unless you are like, okay, I tried to achieve my goal, I came close, but even if I had accomplished my goal, I don't think I would have been happy accomplishing my goal. Like I don't think this is truly what I want, and that's a period of time of self-reflection that you need to have. But you know, if you do walk away from that reflection, you're like, okay, I do want to do this. You just have to focus on continually improving yourself. And one kind of, you know, unique aspect of this sport is it is the amount of chaos in it. And you might get a freaking bad batch of workouts drawn for you in a qualifier that bumps you 15 spots down from, you know, where you previously were, or out of contention for a specific division from last time. But then next year you might get freaking the best workouts for you, and now all of a sudden you're back up 20 spots from your best ever performance. And you know, I think that is one thing that needs to be not used as an excuse, because you can always get better at things, and just kind of like a reflection from you know, whatever your qualifier is or whatever, but also kind of like an expectation that is set ahead of time. Is like, hey, I'm you know, 230 pounds. Like if it's a gymnastics heavy competition, I'm probably not going to do very well at that competition, you know, but I know that there are certain things that I can set goal wise as wins for myself inside of that competition to walk away feeling happy about my performance, if that makes sense.
Oh, yes, 100%.
And so that's kind of like another route that you can go to kind of manage some of the emotions that you're going to have if you do end up falling short of your goal. So
and just even putting like a blanket statement down there, like with every failure that you perceive as at least a big failure, there's still victories that you've made along the way. So you can still like hang your head up on those and know that like you are doing well, even though like your big goal yes, maybe I didn't hit this, but I did a lot of these things right that are like
Yeah.
right below that.
Mhm.
And so like there's pros and cons, good and bad with everything, but enjoy the good and learn from the bad.
Yeah. That's a good little phrase there. Enjoy the good, learn from the bad.
Yeah.
So what other thoughts you got here? Any closing thoughts or anything?
I think we kind of went over just checking through some of the notes and other stuff, like where we went over everything we talked about. But I think for kind of the grand scheme is like, it's to put a summary on like some things that we talked about, like it's gonna take a while. So like don't obviously expect it to be overnight. Stay true to what it is, have that solid foundation beforehand so you know like, hey, if my goal is to make it to a semifinal event, then but I'm choosing to go out every Friday night and have a couple drinks and go out to eat with like my family or my friends. Well, then you might need to have some like life changes, or you might have to like change your goal and be like, hey, in my life, it's more important for me to go out and be with my friends during this Friday evening. So maybe instead of making it to a semifinal event, my goal is then let's see how good I can do in the quarterfinals, and I'm gonna be happy with how I do. So like it's setting those expectations and like choosing what's important to you, because you shouldn't also as like an athlete or just a person in general, like you shouldn't be told like, hey, this is what you need to do. You need to figure out what you want, what's important to you, and then you maximize or do the best that you can with like how like the cards in your hand. So I think that's very important for people to realize too, where yes, we're all human, people like different things. Our schedules are different. So it's like, okay, this is what I'm dealing with. How can I, or what's the best version of myself that I can be with what I have to offer?
Totally. Yep. I think one little caveat off of that is don't ever fucking expect to lose. So just because we put this podcast out here doesn't mean that this should be at the forefront of your thoughts. Like the forefront of your thoughts should always be to fucking win a competition, come out in first, and just fucking crush everybody else's soul. But in the case that you do not have that happen, that you have to have some things to fall back on so you don't just fucking spiral and self-destruct and you're no longer an athlete. But
yes. Well, I'm glad you mentioned that too, because we were kind of going into like a lot of like what ifs, like what if this happens, what if this happens in different scenarios. But like it doesn't mean you should anticipate the what ifs. You should anticipate going out there and like just annihilating the competition, running your best race and do that.
Yeah.
But then our conversation here is like, what if that doesn't happen? And that's to kind of like control the future outcomes. So I mean, not everything's going to be perfect, but if we can know like, hey, there is ways that I can like set the tone or set my like emotional response, so like this, maybe if there is a bad thing in the future, that it doesn't completely derail me, I can still work towards my goal. Because like obviously you should expect to win, you should expect to do everything you want to do, but there's going to be kind of a roller coaster along the way. Not everything's going to be perfect. So it's like, yes, we should want to be here. But our conversation today is like, what if we get down here? Well, then how can I get back up here? And that's what we want everybody to be at too. So we can try to ride that steady line. But, and then bouncing back. I think that's should be like a quote of how this conversation went. How can I bounce back the best?
Yep. And so hopefully this podcast provided you guys with some tools on how to do that. And a lot of it honestly is self-reflection and figuring out what it is that I need to do for next year. Because fucking losing is probably the worst feeling on the face of this planet. So
and that's where a coach is there to help with that too. And know that you're not alone. So like if you are in that situation, reach out to your coach. You guys are in a partnership. It's not like a one person talking down to another person.
For sure. So well, cool. Thanks for listening, guys. Austin, thanks for coming back on here. We'll try and we'll try and get these out a little bit more regularly. If you guys are obviously watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. Follow us on Instagram at blacklisted.hq. What is your guys' gym Instagram?
At Honor Fitness MN, as in Minnesota.
Sweet. It's about to get cold up there.
Yep. We're still having some running days right now while it's warm. It's like 70 degrees today, but I know in 3 months' time, that's going to be an 80-degree shift.
Yep. So, sweet. Well, thanks for listening, guys, and we will catch you on the next one.
Yeah, thanks, guys.